Welcome to Reform Custom Builds with Justin. Today we're making a waterfall walnut rolling Ottoman table. Yeah, that's a mouthful. But let's start off with the walnut. The lumber that I've got here is 8/4. I have to piece some stuff together to get it wide enough to actually make it the size that the customer wanted. Yes, I did send pictures of each piece so that the customer would know what was coming before they actually received anything. What I'm doing here is putting some double-sided carpet tape on the two pieces of board below, sticking it to it. I'm going to use my track saw to joint it because the little jointer that I have does not work well on large pieces. So we're going to start off by getting these all strapped in, tape them down, press them together so that they can't move, put my track on it, and we're going to saw away. When I'm done, yes, they go together flawlessly. Also, just a note, whenever you're jointing boards this way, the main thing about trying to do it is setting up so that you're cutting right in between both boards so that your saw blade is perfectly going in between each one so that it will line up just as smooth as the blade does, just like that. That's what we're looking for, is for it to go together perfectly. Mark my board so that I know where to put them back together whenever I go for my glue up. And then, of course, little Titebond 3. Love the fingers, not the brushes. Rub it on, make sure you got a lot. Get some squeeze out. Make sure that this bond is going to hold. The glue will be strong enough to hold by itself. I allowed it to dry and cure for 3 full days before I even started into the next part of this project. Use a couple cauls to make sure that it is going to stay straight. Sometimes it takes a little persuasion. Whenever you're pulling the boards together though, with like the Betsy clamps you see down there, my bar clamps, you don't have to over tighten. The cauls I'm getting a little tight because I wanted to make sure that it stays straight and flush. And then walk off and let it dry. I'm gonna fill in a few knot holes after I clean them out with a chisel. Sorry I didn't get the footage of that. In this case, they're small. I'm just using CA glue and some black dye. And then once that's cured, I will sand it off. Make sure that everything's good. You can already see my pencil marks there so that I can start sanding when it's time. I stirred it with my special stirrer, the screw, some activator. Gonna do the old glue and sawdust trick because I had a small, it was little, but it was noticeable to me. And you know, whenever you're making your own project, any flaw is noticeable to you. So I'm going to use the sawdust and glue trick to blend it in so that you can't see the lines anymore. And then from here, of course, it's everybody's favorite, sand and sand. And keep on sanding some more, and maybe some more. Alright, I'm not gonna make y'all watch all the sanding. I love to wipe my stuff off with a little rubbing alcohol. It just seems to clean the dust off a little bit better, and that's just my go-to. Not everyone's that way. Now I'm gonna straighten up my edges and my sides. Make sure that I've got a square edge to go off of. I do believe that I trimmed it with the table saw to be the exact width, and I did not get that on camera either. So I'm using a new camera setup, and it flips back and forth, and if I oops and open my phone, it will shut the cameras off, and I won't realize it because I'm not that tech savvy. So here you see me squaring off the edge, or the end, sorry, at the end. And Just trying to leave all the space that I can until I've actually cut my 45s into it to make the river. Make sure it all lines up. And we do. Give you a couple angles here to see, so that you know I'm not just fooling the eye. Now I'm measuring out the first leg, the top, and then making sure I've got the space. Square it off so I know where my cut's supposed to go. Mark my line. Put a brace underneath it so whenever I go to cut it doesn't collapse in on itself. Set my track saw at a 45. And just a heads up, track saws this track saw, I shouldn't say all track saws, but this track saw will not go on a 45 all the way through this, so I had to use my pull saw in order to finish it off, which was no big deal, but I was really hoping that the track saw would make it. I missed it by like maybe 1/8 of an inch. Handy dandy pull saw, come out pretty good. Now I'm going to start the other side. So you got to always cut backwards so that your waterfall will actually match up. So cut forward the first time, cut backward on the second time, and do the same to the other side, which I'm not going to make you sit through, and voila, we're getting it ready for glue up. I did not use dominoes, I did not use dowels, I did not use anything inside of it, just the glue. Once again, I let it sit for quite a while, and then I put some pressure on it to make sure that it was actually going to hold, because it is going over an Ottoman. I wasn't really afraid of a lot of pressure going on it because it would be pushing down into the Ottoman, but I still wanted to make sure. I also took the advice of a few guys out there. I believe I got this one from John Malecki, or maybe Bourbon Moth, I'm not sure, but the blue tape for the glue up so that you don't have as much cleanup on the squeeze out. It worked really well, actually. I did have to fight a little sliver of blue tape at the back once it was all glued and I was trying to get everything cleaned up. But as far as glue and sanding in that area, no big deal. It worked out really well. You know me, always a lot of glue. Let's put it together, and then we're going to start clamping, and then glue the other side. And clamp, and clamp, oh, and clamp, maybe another clamp. You can never have too many clamps when it comes to woodworking, just so you know. Get everything clamped up. I've got my little 90-degree clamps in there just to make sure that I am where I'm supposed to be, and everything turned out really well. I'm actually proud. This is my first waterfall table to make out of solid wood and not have epoxy in it. Epoxy, I feel like I'm cheating because I can cut it and put some epoxy in it to fill it. Here I am cutting out the slots for the concealed rollers that are going to be in here. So as far as actually looking at the table from the top down, you wouldn't be able to see that it even has rollers. From the side, you can only see about a little less than 1/4 of an inch of the roller bottom. So it looks like it's just kind of floating across the floor, and that's what the customer wanted. That's what I did. That's my first time to ever try that. And those are the casters that I bought to use, and you gotta get really deep inside of there to get it. I do go back with my chisels and straighten out my slots so that they're all squared off and look prettier than they would if I would have just left them alone. I am not a professional with a chisel. Probably need someone to come teach me how to do a chisel, how to use a chisel, and then how to sharpen them. Here I am putting a very small chamfer just to soften up the edges. If you were standing to the outside looking at it, you would probably not even realize that I did anything, but if you ran your hand over it, you can feel the difference. Flip this big beast over and do the other side. Make sure I do every angle that I've got. I don't want anything to look off or funny. So I do each and every side. Make sure that all of it's smooth and soft. And now I'm hitting it with a 220 because I've already done everything up to that point up to where I would be using a 220. And I spend more and more and more time sanding. And sand some more. There for a split second you can see the little fill-ins that I did. Alright, we're all flush, level, the slots are cut. Blow it off, clean it up. Like I said, I love the rubbing alcohol for cleanup. I just think it makes everything look really pretty and cleans it off really well. And then sand some more. I didn't want any grain pop after the fact, and the rubbing alcohol actually does pretty good at the grain pop and pulling it up so that when you sand, you don't have the issues when you're doing your finish. The little guy's running around back there. He loves the ginormous wagon that I bought for working, and he likes to use it to roll down the hill in the front yard. Now, we are going to go for some Total Boat, however you say that. Either way, it's Total Boat's varnish, and I will say this is my first time using it, but I'm highly impressed. I wanted to use this because I knew that there were going to be cups and drinks and things put on this, and I didn't want water rings to be an issue. I didn't want there to have issues with it. I ended up putting on a total of 3 coats and sanding in between the first coat with a 220. In between the second coat I used a 400, and then to the third coat I ended up hitting it with a 1200 grit just to make sure everything was really, really smooth. And it turned out really, really nice. The client was impressed and loved it. So I can't say anything different about it. And that's it, guys. It turned out better than I expected for sure. So thank y'all for watching.